Hey everybody, we just wrapped up sessions today where we take this drawing, we apply Trace and Studio to create this.
We made a fun project, a puzzle for the little one in your life, and we went over how to use a bead cutting bit in Origin to put radiuses on all the pieces.
So, if you're not watching it live, we are here every other Thursday at sessions.shapertools.com, and then they'll come out on YouTube afterwards. But if you have time, you should join the live because you can ask questions. We answer them after the show, and then you can also win things, giveaways. So, we hope to see you there, 4 p.m. Pacific time, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shaper Sessions. My name is Jake,
And I'm Sean.
and today we're making puzzles.
So many puzzle pieces.
Today we're going to make a puzzle using Trace Studio, and we're going to cut it out on Benchpilot. And the idea is very similar to an inlay, obviously with a bigger offset so that it actually comes together. And the idea, I'm making a toy for my son.
Yeah, and it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. A reminder to everyone, this is a totally live show, so please take the opportunity to ask those questions in the chat box below. We're going to go over them at the end during the Q&A section, and about halfway through the show, we'll have a little break. A poll question will pop up. You're going to need to answer that question in order to enter your name into the giveaways at the end of the show. And just so you can ruminate on it a little bit, the question for the day is, what sessions do you want to see for the rest of the year? We're in that planning phase.
Oh yeah, they might need a little time to think about this one.
You know. This, speaking of which, this show topic actually comes from a viewer that reached out over email and had a very similar project. So,
oh, that's interesting.
this comes inspired from you all.
Nice. Well, should we jump into it?
Let's get right into it.
All right. Well,
All starts with a drawing.
What puzzle are we making, Jake?
Making a palm tree puzzle.
You want to show them your drawing over here?
So something a little beach inspired, big blocky pieces. Again, this is going to be for a small child to put together. So we wanted to keep it relatively simple, but I wanted to walk you through the process of how we got to actually cutting. I always like to start my traces out with pencil. I think that's just, I'm sure that you can hardly see that, but it's a pencil drawing so I can kind of figure out what's going to go where before committing. And then we have this little light tablet, which is a stretch, or, it's not necessary, but it certainly is nice so that we can overlay another piece of paper and ink it up.
Yeah, and I think the trick here is, when you're drawing the idea out, you might not get it perfect. So having a light box, there's a bunch of different ones you can buy. This one's nice. It's battery powered, so you don't even have to have it plugged in.
Super cool.
But once you get the design figured out, and you're gonna have to work through some of those details along the way, you can take your time, really line the drawing in a nice way. So that way, when you go to trace it, you'll have less work to do later in Studio.
Yeah, exactly. Key thing with trace is you want that high contrast. So yes, you could use pencil, but you're going to get the best results when you use a black ink and white paper.
Yeah,
high contrast.
I really like the pen that comes with trace, and kind of any technical pen. And then even like a permanent marker with kind of a bigger tip sometimes works. And we'll talk through some of the details about why why you would pick different pens for different projects. But in this case, when we're trying to find very specific puzzle pieces to fit other ones, and we want to kind of pull those out so we can cut multiple parts, it is pretty crucial to have the drawing pretty correct. So, yeah.
A couple other key things that we were thinking about. Of course, we're using a router, so we're going to have interior radiuses of our pieces that are coming together. So be conscious of that when you're drawing your pieces. Let's try to get a little closer here. There. We blocked these pieces out very intentionally. So if you see this group of leaves here is all one puzzle piece. So any interior cut needs to have a little radius on it. If we're looking for those sharp corners, we can totally get that, but we just need to make sure that they're at an intersection of multiple pieces so that we're not stuck in a corner with a round router bit and a sharp corner.
Yeah, and maybe to try to explain it a little more, we even have this piece back here, which I don't know if Ramon's in the chat today, but we designed this years ago. And one of the things we found is anytime you have multiple parts that come together, you need rounded pieces or they won't mesh well. But when me and Ramon were working on this, we really wanted some sharp points to come together without a round over. And what we realized is as long as you have multiple pieces, where they all meet can be a point. So you can break shapes apart in ways that give you sharp points. It just means you have more pieces that you need to cut, and you can't just cut big chunks. Yeah, this is a really good example, Jake.
Just to have it really stark, we have radiuses here, because that's what we're cutting. We have nice, crisp, sharp corners on the inside.
Because they're separate pieces. Yeah.
Now, of course, if you're into this kind of thing, you can totally bust out a chisel and make it sharp.
Yep.
Not going to stop you from doing that.
But if you're trying to crank a few of them out,
Right.
you might as well take the extra time to design it in. It will save you some time in the long run.
Totally. And honestly, looking back on this is going to a small child. There should be no sharp corners.
Yeah.
I'm going to soften everything before I give it to them.
And we got some tricks up our sleeve for that later in the show after the break.
Yeah.
But Jake, I think one thing that would be helpful because you did most of the design work for this one and I didn't, and I'm just kind of looking at it fresh with my eyes, but I'm assuming some of the viewers are also thinking like, how did you decide what to break up where and kind of,
Oh, yeah, overhead camera. Well, I first was thinking about the size of the blocks and the colors of the blocks. So we have, obviously, the sky. We have a bunch of different colors, and we have a bunch of different species of wood here. That is our color palette. But I wanted to make sure that it would fit on a pretty standard piece of material that I could mill down responsibly by using, scrap or whatever I could find around in different species. And wanted to be big and blocky enough so that it felt easy. We're not going for a super intricate puzzle here.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, should we go into Trace Land and
Let's
get this into studio?
Yeah, I want to see what that looks like. Fresh off of the trace into studio.
Okay, let me get this set up. Okay, and I'm going to grab Trace off the wall here from our handy nail. Okay, so I'll just, for those of you who are not familiar with Trace, I'm assuming a lot of people have seen it, but maybe not everybody. Trace is a standalone product that allows you to draw something, put this frame over the top of your drawing, and use a application on your phone. Let's see if we'll go over to this phone now. Oh. Let me start this over again. Yes. Okay, let's try this now. Okay, cool. So the first thing it's going to do is ask for camera access to your phone, which you just click allow. And then you're going to look through the camera. And when you see the screen go black and white and this green ready to capture button, you just click the button and it's going to convert that into a digital SVG for you. And this is useful for Shape Origin, CNC machines, Cricut machines, laser cutters, kind of any digital fabrication machine. So you can see it got the scale, and I didn't have to worry about how I was taking this picture. I can zoom around and look at my output. And critically, there's a feature called centerline that allows you to basically pick the center of these lines. So if I come in here and I toggle between, you'll see outlines actually capturing the width of that pen stroke, and centerline is going to kind of average and find all the pen strokes and find the inside. And so this is a feature that allows you to essentially get really crisp images out. And when we're going to grab those shapes out, we really do want to get kind of perfectly matching pieces. So this is the basics of the app. There's a couple of little details. If I click this button, I can come in here and I can deselect objects that I don't want. And down on the bottom, it might be a little hard to see, there's a smoothness button, and I can move that up to try to smooth lines out a little bit. So you can see actually up here in this corner, if the smoothness is 0, you see a little bit of a jagged edge here. But if I just bump that smoothness up to 1, to 2, boom, now we're basically in the exact area we want. Just going to zoom around and make sure everything else looks good. It does. So I'm going to hit done. And then now we go back into this and we have our really nicely smoothed out thing. And so the key here is like when we're tracing it for that second time over the top of the pencil, just make sure your lines are all as close to possibly good as it can be. And what you'll notice with center line is sometimes you can kind of feather the line. So let's say you make a little error when you're drawing. Center line is going to average the width of that pin line, and so if you just kind of wiggle both sides, it'll average in there, and then you'll get kind of the right outcome. And I can see a couple areas where Jake kind of went off the line, and he just realized, hey, I'm just going to kind of fill that area in, and it's going to take the center of that kind of thickness, even if the thickness goes from thick to thin to thick. And so that's a pretty good little tip when you're trying to get center line working. But now that we've traced it, all we have to do is decide what to do with the file. I can save the SVG to my phone, send it over in an email and a text message, save it to my local storage of my phone to transfer it to other places. I can save it straight to Shaper Files, which just allows Shaper Hub access to it. And I can also, if I have Studio, I can just open it directly with Studio. So I'm just going to hit that button because we want to open this in Studio. And I'll say, give me a new Studio design. And it's going to open from Trace to Studio. And it's just going to ask us to confirm one thing. Do we want to import this shape all together, or do we want to do it exploded? And in this case, we want exploded because we're going to take all those little areas and start building our puzzle pieces with it. So we'll place these 46 objects, and boom, now we have a Studio design with this in there. So that's the basic drawing to Studio workflow. And then I think, Jake, we can come over here, and I'm going to open a different, I'm going to open that same one we just saved. Okay.
It's top of the list on Studio.
Yeah, and what's cool is if, anytime you save files to Studio, if you just go to studio.shapertools.com, it'll open the most recently modified file for you. So if you just hit the trace, save that, go to your browser, open Studio, you should be in this file, which is untitled 2. So let's just talk through a couple basics. We have already prepared the full file, but to walk you through some of the ideas that we were hoping to show you, we'll just do it here. So step one is, if we come over here, Jake had this pretty sweet idea to build a little tray to fit all the pieces perfectly.
Yeah.
So that way, when you're playing with it, it's like they fit in here when they're correct. And so he just created in Studio a couple rounded rectangles. And so we can do that by clicking the shapes, rounded rectangle, and we can just visually drag that out or make it kind of however big or small we wanted to do it. Let's just say here. Now the key here is we need to intersect with all these lines that are coming out. And so actually, when I took the picture of that trace, I actually had not shifted trace properly kind of around the drawing. And so you'll see that this side here is pretty short. That line actually continues out more in the trace file. And so we'll just ignore that for the moment.
Yeah, we can work with it.
But at least you can understand what we're talking about here. So I'll just make this a little smaller for now. And I'm going to also make this a little smaller here. But now we have kind of this rectangle, and the idea now is we can start thinking about, okay, which shapes we're going to break into shapes in different parts. So
you can even see when you highlight over them, it kind of highlights individual shapes. So we need to block it out.
Because when we imported this, we kind of broke apart everything in the exploded way. So all these little lines are different, which is great for the kind of purpose we're going to do. But the basic process from now in Studio would essentially be selecting everything by holding Shift and dragging around it, and then using Shapeshifter. And Shapeshifter allows you to essentially pick what parts of the object you want. So let's say we wanted to start breaking apart these external pieces. The key part here is we need to keep all the existing shapes because we're going to have to do this a bunch of times. And so I like the way Jake broke it out, and we'll go to his file in just a second, but this is a little more simplified at the moment. I'm just going to turn that keep existing shapes on, and I'm going to select this one. And we're going to kind of do work our way around so we don't miss anything. And all we have to do is click make shape, and now, boom, we have that one puzzle piece. Okay. Now we go back here, Shift, select all of these, back to shapeshifter, do the second shape, keep existing shapes. And so we're just we would work our way around this whole puzzle with all these pieces. And I would also probably want to keep all the certain, like, as I'm dragging them around, I'm thinking about which ones I've already done, this one and this one. The next one would also be this one here. Oh, try this one. Okay, so if you see this when I click something and it doesn't go through, that means one of the lines is not connected to the other ones. And so we might need to go in there with the pin tool or the draw tool and actually clean up some of those lines. And that's just part of the process when you're importing these files. There may be a little tiny hole in one of these lines that you need to kind of zoom in and make sure, cool, yes, that is overlapping. Okay, yes, this is overlapping. And you would just have to go around and find out which one of those are.
And you'd rather it overlap, if you're trying to, it doesn't have to be dead on, I guess I'm trying to say.
Correct. Yeah, like when we're using shapeshifter, like let's just say we wanted to explain this. I'm going to hit the draw tool here, and I'm just going to draw a line from here to here. Okay. And I'll go ahead and hit the D key to complete that. Now, when I go to shapeshift everything in that area. Ooh. Okay. Now when we go to shapeshift in that area, clicking this area is going to just select that one little chunk, right? Because this line is cutting this shape off. So somewhere in this shape is where the line is probably open, and it's probably either this one or the one below it. So you might need to use the draw tool to clean up this drawing a little bit if you are seeing that type of issue.
You can also adjust the length of a particular line in most cases.
Oh yeah, I did see you did that, which was pretty nice. So
just
so you just kind of select this and then scale it up a little bit or move it around a little bit, and you can see scaling is going to do a little bit of a weird thing to certain types of lines, because scaling this is going to move the one at the area at the top. But Jake was even saying, just use the arrow keys to like arrow things up and down to make sure they're overlapping. So if you're having issues with it selecting more than it needs, you might have to go in and adjust some of these points. Okay, so we're going to go around, kind of do this shapeshifter method. And what I was saying is, like, we would keep all the sky area in one area, because once we get these pieces out, then we have to lay them out for the material we have, and we don't want to cut the sky and the type of wood that should be in the base. So let's jump over real quick to the other file that Jake has so graciously already prepared, so we don't have to do this all live. And Ted will throw this in the chat for us. So if anyone wants to get started on this tonight, all the files will be here. So let's talk about how Jake set this up. Actually, you know what, Jake? Why don't you talk about it, because you set it up.
So I took that original drawing right there.
This one?
That's what came out of Trace. And what I went through and did that exact process as you described.
Yep.
Grabbed each part.
This is kind of the first step here. All the parts here, the tree, the outside, and then the bottom is down here. Yep. Yeah. Nice.
And key part here, there's some really tiny lines, especially on like the coconuts. They're hard. You can hardly see them. But with the engraving bit, they're going to be the eyes of the coconut.
Oh, nice.
So when you're selecting this kind of stuff, just make sure to select all of it.
Yeah, and I'd say the pro move is to hold down the shift key, and then you can click and drag from point to point, and that will just select everything in that area. If you try to like select this and then shift select all these pieces, it'll take have more chance of missing something. So just use that shift hotkey, and that will speed it up.
Nice.
Notably, this is yellow. What does that mean?
That means it is a reference line. So that way, it's just I'm no longer using it or trying to select it. It is just for reference purposes only. In this case, visual reference of how it comes together.
Specifically, we can't change it. You'll notice when I click one of these, they don't move. I can't scale it, and you'll see this little lock icon. If you were to click that, then you could kind of make this editable again. These files would all be there. So when you're doing the shapeshifter, bringing this in and turning it into a reference will keep you from making a mistake later. And then if you want to unreference it, you can shift select that area, hit the orange button, and now it's back to normal shape. And so you can go in and out of this quite a bit. And when you're building these, sometimes you want to just save the basic shape because you might need it for something later.
Yeah. When in doubt with this kind of stuff, select everything and duplicate it, and just use a different part of the screen.
Yep. And just to show people how that would work, I would select this, click Make Editable, and then there's a bottom area here. You can just say duplicate, and click that. It'll duplicate that whole area. And now when we move this around, we have a duplicate of that. We can shape shift and then keep this as kind of our basic structure. So that's a pretty good one. One other small detail, kind of pro tip, is when you make something a reference lock, if you then try to select something in a marquee selection by using that shift and drag method, you'll notice as I'm dragging, it's going to recognize these, but it's not going to select the reference pass. And this is important. We don't want to select the reference pass in a lot of cases. If you want to, you'll just need to mark that as editable. But if you drag the other way and you're only selecting reference pass, it'll allow you to select them, and then you could do whatever you want with them. But as soon as you hit a shape, boom, it deselects the reference pass. So kind of
nice.
a cool interaction when you're trying to do this kind of like back and forth between the reference pass. Okay.
Excellent.
Nice. So we've broken the shapes up, and we have our basic shape here for the tray. And then now what, Jake?
So over here, you can do, this is going to be different for everybody. These larger rectangles are the size of my material that I prepped.
Nice.
So I have some beech, I have some ash, walnut, sapele, and white oak. And for those larger pieces, I'm basically nesting them within the material that I have available. And I'm trying to be conscious of the direction of the grain. I want that to kind of work with the image. So these pieces aren't one for one dragged over. They're rotated, kind of twisted into position so that I think the grain will play with it. Now, for something like this, you can also just import every single shape as an individual file and then do that on the fly, which is super cool because you can see the grain and you can twist the piece and get exactly what kind of grain pattern you're looking for.
Yep. Well, and even more complicated, depending on the drawing, which you would probably have to go back here, you might actually want the grain on this piece to go a certain way and these front three to go a different way, for visual contrast and depth. So, thinking, it's how far do you want to think about this up front and what are you going for? But yeah, it is pretty smart to just basically take your stock size and draw the stock size, and then you can start fitting pieces inside of it. Pretty cool little technique.
Yeah.
And then you could always grid that little piece and snap it directly to that size.
I did, in fact.
Oh, you did?
I grabbed this out of the scrap bin. It was exactly this size, so I knew that I needed to, I didn't have much room for error there, so I needed to land it.
Yeah.
So I gridded off of this piece. Everything else was more or less visual.
Nice.
And I have a few more pieces to cut.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the studio portion.
That's the design.
And if you have questions in the comments, we'll handle those later in Q&A. And I think we're ready to go to a break.
Let's do a quick break, and then we'll get into cutting the rest of this out. And then, of course, I'm going to make you assemble it.
Oh, nice. You better make sure you guess the offsets perfect.
Yeah. All right. So let's bring that poll question up. It's going to be, what would you like to see in sessions this year? We're in our big brainstorming session.
We've been doing this a while, and I think we were thinking, what are the people interested in seeing? I mean, we have so many possible things to talk about, but maybe there's some great ideas in the group.
Yeah.
So let us know. If you click that poll, then you can enter that answer, and then that's what enters you in the giveaway and the Q&As. So if you would like to be in the giveaways, now's your chance.
This week's shop tour is going to be from Andrew Kidd. Thank you, Andrew, for sending that in. Ian, when you're ready, we can roll into that.
All right, everyone. Welcome to my shop. I have a shop here that was originally home to a fishing boat. About 2 years ago, I decided to sell the boat and start investing in some better woodworking equipment. Take you down through here. As you can see on the wall here, I've got my shaper trace and my plate back there in a bag. all of my hanging tools. When I bought the house, it had all of these cabinets, and I decided to leave them for now. They're really handy, but they do help me hoard just a little more than I'd like to. Thinking about trying to change a little bit to do a little bit more wall hanging storage back along this wall. You can see my workstation. My workbench. Going to plan to try to change this out this year. Small box I just got done working on with the shaper. Well, in the midst of working on. My garage workstation here for finishing up some design work. My Laguna bandsaw, love that bandsaw. Got a nice DeWalt scroll saw. My Rockler router table. Got this before the shaper. I still use it occasionally, but I prefer to use the shaper whenever I can, or the Origin, I should say. Over against the wall here, the windows are nice, but they take up wall space, honestly. I think I'd rather just have extra wall space. Occasionally let the light in though. Got my Powermatic 6-inch joiner. My DeWalt planer. Here's my dust collection system. This is my dust collector on a skateboard, so I can move it wherever I need it to be. Integrated with the Oneida Cyclone. A very important aspect of the shop here, the hens and chickens. You know, you just can't have a shop without having some hens and chickens in there. Actually, they're heading outdoors in a few days, but gotta wait for the cool to stop. Over here, you can see I've got my Festool track for my track saw. An old Craftsman drill press, still works great. My DeWalt chop saw. And my very favorite part of the shop is my, well, aside from the shaper Origin, of course, is the saw stop table saw. I absolutely love that. Based on a comparison against the old contractor saw I used to have, it's a night and day difference. Contractor saw does the job, but it just doesn't quite do it the same way that a saw stop does. Over here, I've got my 1632 drum sander. Fantastic purchase. I love that thing. I hate sanding, and it does so much of the tough work for you. I can't say enough good things about having the drum sander in the shop. So for me, that's about it. Thanks everyone for watching, and have a good shaper session.
Right on. Thank you, Andrew, for sending that over.
I always love seeing these when I haven't seen this one before.
Yeah.
Until I see it live, and it's like two things. The cabinets with the glass in it was kind of interesting because
nice
it's
touch.
like you kind of get to see what's in there. But I would also like don't want to know what's in my cabinets sometimes. And then the windows. I don't have windows in my shop.
Yeah,
That's
you
my
work in a
biggest.
cave.
That's my biggest problem. I got good lighting, but I have no natural light, so I'm pretty jealous about the windows.
One day I want a big skylight in the shop.
So it can leak water right on your workbench.
I know we're supposed to look at all the tools, but I couldn't help but notice that in those glass cabinets, he has a Flowbee, which a genius invention. It is a way to cut your hair and vacuum up the hair as you cut. Incredible invention.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
And fun fact, that's how George Clooney cuts his hair.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, thanks for sending it in. It's always nice to see people's shops. You know, it's like everybody's got you can learn something from just checking out a setup, you know?
Yeah, and we all need more plants in our shop.
That's right. All right.
We have another video from one of ours.
Oh,
that we
yeah.
want to show you.
Does she know we're showing this?
I did ask
Okay,
permission.
you did.
Yeah. In the spirit of puzzle making, Audrey sent us a video that she did a while back. that worked perfectly into today's show.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I don't know if everyone's seen this, but Audrey essentially using trace made this missing piece. There's a puzzle out there by Simone, who's a pretty famous YouTuber, and she makes this impossible puzzle, which is all white pieces, and then it's missing one piece. So Audrey
Frustrating beyond belief.
thought it was hilarious to take trace, take a picture of it, grab the little area that was missing with Studio, and recreate that little area with Shapeshifter.
Look at that
And
technique
cut it
too,
out with
the
Origin.
circles.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Cut it out with Origin at her home. I think it's actually in her little kitchen workshop.
Nice.
And look at this. I mean, it's just so satisfying to take the impossible puzzle and make it possible.
I love it. Bam. Also, such a tasteful video.
Yeah, it's a great video.
This
So, Audrey, thank you for sending that in 2 years ago.
yeah, this is old. I'm glad we brought this back.
I had forgotten about it. It was so long ago.
All right, we're ready to make some sawdust.
Break's over. Okay.
Break's over.
Back to the education.
So I went ahead and did some of this so that we're not sitting around watching Bench Pilot cut. But we're doing a couple of things here. One where we have a little bit more engraving of details to do. We need to cut the outside of the remaining shapes, but I'm also going to teach you how to do a radius with Origin using a radius point cutting bit. Basically is a radius that comes up to a point in the middle of the...
You want to show that on
I'll show
camera
that,
so
yeah.
people, because this one's a pretty cool little I know there's a name for this specifically.
Point cutting.
Is it?
Yeah, radius point cutting bit. Or bead bit.
I think that's what I normally refer to it as.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and you can buy them much larger too. So like that, you can get a 1/4 inch, half, a third of an inch, roughly, like huge bead, and it just has a nice profile. And
Yeah.
one of the cool things about it is if you think about using a roundover bit on a router table, you have a bearing bit that is a certain size, and so you can find 1/8 inch now, but most of them are 1/4 inch. So anything smaller than a 1/4 inch can't actually get inside of like these areas where I know you had the little, where's the tree part that you already cut? That one you could show that like you could not get into certain areas with a regular router. So these point cutters actually allow you to go right into those little areas and not worry about the size of a bearing, which is a pretty cool little trick for Origin.
Yeah, I love it. There's some finessing that has to happen to get it just right. So we'll talk about that before show's end. For now, I have my standard 60-degree engraving bit in there, and I'm just going to do the last couple passes on this. So I want to preview cuts. Oh, let's go ahead and I do need to bring in some designs.
You do?
Yeah. One moment while I switch accounts. I forgot my tree trunk.
Do you want me to turn everything else into a reference path real quick or no?
I guess you could have just saved it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, too late now.
Oh, you got it?
I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and grab that tree trunk. There it is. I've already rotated it. And again, I just broke these out into individual files so that I could place them on their respective wood species. So my trunk is going to be out of walnut. And I need to preview cuts because I just want to do the engraving. So let's go ahead and edit our selection. Deselect all. So none of this is selected. Just grab these lines. Confirm. All my cut settings are good to go. And we can do this in one foul swoop. Here we go. You know, what's fun here too is I'm using the engraving bit, but I could also use that point cutting bit to add more dimensionality to these pieces.
Yeah, I think it just depends the look you want. You know, that the point cutter definitely has a bigger entry into the cut than the regular engraving bit does.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not cutting that deep, you won't see the radius. You know. Last one.
There we go.
Nice.
Swap over to our standard 1/8 inch. I'm working with 1/2 inch thick material. I got some tight internal radiuses, but really I just love the 1/8 inch bit. Like I probably could have used the 1/4, but for this kind of stuff.
Well, the nice thing with the 1/8 inch bit, you're just removing so much less material as you're going around. And so, like, especially when you have these small pieces, the waste factor becomes pretty important.
Mm-hmm. All right, 1/8 inch and a Z-touch. And back to preview. Same thing. I want to edit my selection, deselect all. Let's just grab the things that we need to cut. Outside of that, then 1, 2, 3. That's my ocean. I may or may not dye the ash blue.
You might.
I might.
You know, I got some blue milk paint, and it looks pretty good on ash.
Okay.
Because it pretty much just goes in the open grain.
We're going to go down to 0.51 deep. And we'll do that in 3 passes. 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, then finish pass. Oh, one last thing. Now's my chance to give it that offset so that it actually comes together with toddler hands. Nice and easy. So we're going for a loose fit here. I'm going to give everything a negative 0.08 of an inch. All right, here we go.
Four minutes, not bad, not bad.
Not bad. Probably could crank it a little bit more.
That's true. I hear the questions haven't been coming in today as heavy. So if you have a question that you'd like us to go over in Q&A, you have a project you're having an issue with, a question about how something works, definitely drop it in the comment section so we can have a few more things to talk about after the show. We'd love to hear, if hey, you're in the middle of a project and you have some questions about should I do this or should I do that. This is a great time for me and Jake to help answer and maybe save you some mistakes.
If we can.
If maybe we can't.
That's what we're here for.
We don't know it all.
Yeah.
Do you think 8 thou is enough negative offset?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, because if you think about it, you have 2 pieces that both have negative 8 thou.
Oh, right.
So you're looking at a 0.016.
Right. Yeah,
amount of space.
I didn't do the math.
Yeah, you always got to think. You got double that.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking normally when I normally do like a negative offset for like a good fit, it's like 5 thou. You know? Yeah, that's normally mine. Oh.
My cord got caught.
It's a good time to explain, anytime Origin can't move while it's cutting, it will, if it gets stuck or has a problem, it's going to retract and just kind of stop. Now you can see Jake here. Looks like what actually happens, that piece got loose, which, you know, not enough tape or too much material. Now, one way to fix this would be to kind of reduce the depth a little bit, so you're not cutting all the way through that shape, and that could be a good solution, because, you know, it may just be that for some reason this material in this area is, you know, gonna keep getting loose. You know, the big one stayed, but the little one got a little loose. You know, Jake could have changed that to a 0.50 inch cut and then try to leave a little skin to sand off or file off. That's another good way to do it.
It's actually exactly what we're going to do. I left the coconuts intentionally out of this cut because I'm going to come back in and cut those by hand.
Okay, nice.
Because they're very small and they will undoubtedly get knocked off.
Yep. Well, and you know what I find is, like, you know, if you you know, Origin's pretty accurate when it comes to depth. If you request a depth, you're going to get a very close amount of that. And so if you just take it off, you know, a couple hundredths, you're going to get like a very small wood skin. And at that thin, you can just kind of break the piece out and sand the bottom, and you don't have to worry so much about the pieces coming loose while you're cutting, because it is pretty annoying when they get loose and they, you know, the bit eats it up, and, you know, you got to go mill another piece, or
Yep.
yeah, we'll see in a minute. This little piece is going to fit a lot easier than it would have.
And that's why you always make a little bit of extra material,
That's right.
just in case it pops loose.
Well, wood's just a finicky material, you know. You might think you have it perfectly set up, and then the next morning you come in and everything's all wonky again, you know.
Yep.
Or as you're cutting, you reveal a stress line that you can't see on the outside.
I love wood, but I come from a metalworking background, and let me tell you, metal doesn't do that as much.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I've never really worked with metal, so like I've always just had this as the wood. You know, sometimes it behaves and sometimes it doesn't.
All right, I don't want to show that off, the little boo-boo. So this came loose and stopped Origin from moving, so it retracted and let us know, hey, I can't move.
Yeah, and it is a safety feature on Origin where if it ever gets stuck, it will just kind of retract and stop and wait till you tell it to do something else. Yeah.
I think I could salvage it and get another one
You think you can?
out of this area up here.
You want to send it?
Let's do it. While I'm doing this, I will also come down here and I'm going to cut out the coconuts. But here's how I'm going to do it. It's 0.5 material, 0.5 thick. So I'm going to cut down to 0.48 all the way to my final offset. And then at that point, I can either just pry them out, or I can do one more depth pass at 0.5 and just take that skin on the bottom off. But it's important that you're not putting any side load. So I wouldn't change the offset, just the depth. And there's still a tiny chance that's going to pop off because they are so small, but unlikely. All right, let's fix this boo-boo. I'm going to just copy this shape. Going into manual mode here. I'm going to nest this like that. I'm looking over here.
This is one of those things where if you put extra tape down before and you have a boo-boo, then you might have some extra tape, double-sided tape on the bottom side. But if you're planning it out pretty carefully, you got to remember if there's tape under that area now.
Yeah.
But if there's not, just cut it almost down to the end like we were going to do for the coconuts and pop it out.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. This is also one of those cases where having the 1/8-inch bit probably gave you enough room where if you had a 1/4-inch bit, it would likely not work. And you'll see here, this is one of the coolest things to me about Bench Pilot. You know, you can unclip, push the carriage to the back, and then cut these manually. And all that cut history, all the understanding kind of is saved. If you put it back in the Bench Pilot, it knows that shape's been cut. And so kind of an interesting workflow where Jake can kind of say, hey, you know what? It's actually easier just for me to cut it now than telling Bench Pilot exactly what to do. And it's kind of, you know, sometimes that makes sense, and sometimes it makes sense to, you know, put it in Bench Pilot. But it's kind of the freedom of using Origin and you picking what you want to do. All right, how we do?
Just wanted to show before I cut all the way through that everything stayed in place because of that 0.02 thick skin on the bottom that's keeping everything connected. So now, the only thing I'm going to adjust is the depth and pop them out. And hopefully, after a good press, they're not going to get tangled up in the bit.
All right, we're gonna take bets in the comments. Who thinks they stay, and who thinks they get loose and sucked into the vacuum? You got to bet now. You know, you can't wait. And you'll see one of the things Jake's gonna do here is slow down his travel speed to make sure he doesn't actually overcorrect or, you know, put the bit in an area it shouldn't be. So he's taking it pretty easy. All right, and then back to the final one. You know, the good news is that you normally hear when they get loose, so I think we might be safe. All right, how do we do?
I didn't lose my coconuts.
Oh, I was shocked. I'm shocked. You know, Jake, I think I would have gotten a little flathead screwdriver, stuck it in the bottom, and just, you know, pried it out a little bit.
I prefer to live dangerously.
You do. You live super dangerously in my book.
All right, so when I was designing, when we were drawing this, didn't really consider how much of a choking hazard these are.
You know what, Jake, I wasn't going to say anything, but I think you might want to glue those into the other part of the wood.
That's exactly what we're going to do.
Those I was like, I mean, I think your son's pretty young still, so, you know.
Or hear me out. I could glue these down to the frame, and it kind of gives a little bit of a guide or a starting point. Just nice.
I think you know, I would use Shapeshifter and just connect that probably.
That's pretty awesome, though.
It's pretty sweet to have the different colors, though. Yeah. So,
I mean, coconuts are green, though.
Well, it depends. It depends on the season.
I guess that's true.
And the type of coconut. Is it a husk coconut?
Tell me about types of coconuts, Sean.
I don't know enough about coconut. I do know there are different colored coconuts. Green and brown. That's kind of the most, and then
variety.
White on the inside normally.
Speaking of green, for the leaves or the fronds of my palm tree, I used poplar.
Nice. Classic green wood.
And then for my different. This is stripped at this point.
Okay.
What else we got? The background is beech. The trunk is walnut. Coconuts are sapele. The ocean is ash. And then finally, the the little slice of beach is your favorite. White oak.
Jakey boy. I think you might have to cut that one. Doesn't seem like it's going to fit very well.
All right, last thing is our radius bit. So a couple things that we want to know before we start here. Our bit diameter is actually going to be the size of this tiny little tip here, and that is 0.04. The next thing we really care about is the depth from there to where the radius ends, because we want that to be a really nice seamless transition. And honestly, every time I put this bit back into Origin, I do a manual Z-touch.
Yeah, and I think we should probably take a minute to reiterate that. You know, when you have a small bit, if you do an automatic Z-touch, that point's going to penetrate into the wood a little bit and kind of throw off your zero. So, I don't know, a couple years ago, we released an update with this manual Z-touch, and it allows you to use the red and the green button to raise and lower manually. And when you get it to the spot you like, you just confirm it. Now you know that 0 is right where that bit was. So when you start entering the numbers, it's not gonna be deeper than you thought it would be.
Yeah.
And for engraving bits, small bits, even like those micro bits, millimeter diameter, those type of bits, I always say just use that, lower it down, and get it right above the surface.
And here's what I do every single time. Off on the side, I just make a rectangle, turn it to a pocket, so it's basically a playground to test different depths. So I did too shallow, too deep, where you actually start to see the edge of the bit cutting in. Obviously, way too deep, just right.
No, I like that. I like the pocket square. It's pretty pro move.
The next thing I'm doing is I want to move. If I cut my edge at -8 thou, I want to just bump that bit over a hair. So I'm going to cut these at -7 thou.
Yeah, so you should think of this as the bit diameter. You know, whatever you enter, that's going to reference the shape. And so if you have a bigger version of that or a smaller version, it's going to change where that bead bit is kind of on the line. And so by doing a small number and then we're doing an outside cut, we're going to basically have just that inside of the point right on the edge. And sometimes you might have to even sneak on the kind of positive negative offset side to get the output you're looking for. Because, you know, if you have something that's too wide, it's actually not going to be close enough to the pieces to round it properly. And so you will play with that a little bit. And I like this test piece. Once you figure out that, you can just hit go on everything, and it'll do its job pretty well.
All right, I'm going to go through and select my remaining ones, which really just need to select this one instead. Confirm. We got our 3 our ocean pieces and our tree trunk. Great, and then I don't need to do this in 5 passes. It's automatically thinking I want to do it in that many passes because the bit diameter is so small.
Correct, and you can probably do it in 1, 2.
Yeah, we'll do 2 to be safe.
Okay.
Here we go.
So there's where you can see, you know, we have a 0.04 diameter bit, and that's going to offset that shape by the edge of the material by the half of the diameter of the bit. So if it's too far in or out, you can either make your diameter bigger or smaller, or you can just change the offset to really find the right amount of space in between that round. So you're playing it safe because you played it risky on the last one and got away with it?
On the...
When you were cutting out your coconuts?
Oh, yeah.
I think, there is some merit to kind of, especially with these bead bits, you know, as you're doing multiple passes, you're actually engaging a lot more of the round over.
Right.
So as you go deeper, there's more load on the bit. It's not just a uniform every cut it gets more and more. So, I've done big letterings with these bead bits where you're like, yeah, I want to do 7 passes because I have a 1/4 inch cut at the top of that, and I want to make sure I'm slowly removing material. It's a pretty cool technique though to use the bead bit.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, we could take a lot of these over to the router table, but not all.
Not all, and I think really I just wanted to use this opportunity to show off the application of them too.
Yeah, totally.
It's a lot of fun. Last time I used one of these was for the box challenge a couple of years ago, and used it to create essentially like fluted columns for the corners of my box.
Yeah, even like using it with single line fonts, like if you want to do a big sign with single line fonts, you can just change the deeper you go, the wider it gets exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you get some really nice big lettering with the bigger version of these bits. I have one at home that's probably 3/8 wide at the top, and it goes to a point. So you do have to do a bunch of passes to get to that full round over, but it's pretty nice when you don't have to worry about pieces flying around on the router table, doing multiple passes, all that. Oh yeah.
There we go.
All right. We got a top view so you can see everything.
I'll start popping pieces out.
All right, and I'm going to start popping them in.
Okay, that.
I can't believe I get to put the puzzle together.
That's that was something that Russ started. It's
Oh,
whoever doesn't cut gets to assemble.
Oh, nice. Okay, I like that. Have you? Do we know if it's going to go together yet? You have a pretty good feeling on this one.
It's more of a gut.
Gut.
Yeah.
You're feeling good though.
Feeling good.
I think. I mean, you the coconuts didn't fly apart. Oh yeah, look at that.
It fits.
Yeah, let's see if I can get enough close enough to see where we can see where we're putting them all together.
Thank goodness I have both
How's
the
that?
scraper
Right there?
and the pry bar.
You went the extra mile with these little engravings on the top. It really makes the whole thing have a nice look. Oh yeah, look at that.
With Bench Pilot, it's just kind of it's like why not?
Why not? Oh, now comes the actual puzzle part.
Yeah, this one's tricky.
Yeah, these all look the same. This is going to be harder than that white puzzle Audrey did. Oh, look at that one. Perfect. First time.
Nailed it. Simone, the person that made that white puzzle, also recently released a new puzzle that is all edge pieces.
Really?
It's like a big squiggly river scene. But
You know what? I'm digging this puzzle, Jake, but I'm not the biggest fan of puzzles. They never really did it for me as a kid. I'm just like I'd rather go out in the woods and make a fort or make a dam up a river and then let the water build up or something. It's like I was an outdoors kid.
Anger the beavers.
Yeah, exactly. Or just build it up so you can create like a huge rush of water later when you take it down. All right, here we go. Yeah, it looks the colors. I mean, the color selection is pretty key on this one.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, I love it. Except for this piece. This is not my favorite.
Oh, don't talk your trash on White Oak. Oh yeah, definitely need to soften some of these edges. And the final piece. That's fun.
All right. I think this one goes here.
I don't know.
It's a good thing we recut this one.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Oh, the grain actually worked.
Boom.
Boom.
Wow. Look at that. Put that one. Put that in front of the camera. And actually, you know what? I think the spacing's pretty great.
It's a forgiving level of spacing.
Yeah. Wow. It looks awesome. Can you imagine? Wait till you finish it.
So we will either glue these to a larger piece or glue them straight down to the board.
I think I like having them on the other piece versus the board. Yeah,
Right.
because then it shuffles around a little bit. If they're in there, it's going to be the anchors. You know?
True.
The shuffle factor is pretty good.
I am quite happy with that.
I give that a 10 out of 10, Jake. And, you know, I'm a pretty harsh critic. But I like it.
Right on. Well, I hope anyone watching is inspired and wants to make it for a little one or loved one in their life.
Yeah. Files are in Shaper Hub, so they're just waiting
the
for
studio
you.
file, so you can sync the studio file and adjust them to fit into your size stock instead of just downloading the pre-made files.
Cool.
All right.
Well, that's the show.
That's the show. Let's head over into Q&A. I heard it was light, but that's all right.
All right. See you next time.
Yeah.